Hey out there, this is December 20th, 2014. I'm in Northern California. It's uh, it's about quarter to 10 in the morning here. And today I wanted to touch on a few issues. I'd like to focus on problems and solutions to the problems, as usual. Uh, First, I wanted to touch on a report I saw recently on InfoWars. They had a clip a lady had taken of, she was asking these sheriff's deputies some questions about these big MRAP vehicles that militarized vehicles. These are mine resistant, ambush resistant vehicles. They giant things, just giant armored vehicles. And the sheriff deputy, he said that these were necessary because of gun owning constitutionalists, and he didn't try to take his words back. He meant what he said, and this is part of the training these people are receiving, is to believe that if you're for the Constitution here in America, that somehow you're a threat to the establishment. And the establishment is threatened of its own accord. And the establishment has a guilty conscience. That's what it comes down to. What we've had is the money printing class in collusion with the political class, and they've conspired and succeeded temporarily for the moment at stealing the wealth of America for many generations to come. And if they have their way, they'll do it in perpetuity. So you can understand that these people are very threatened at the idea of a mass awakening in America, and we realize this is true, that this has happened, and the way it's happened is very simple. The money printers have been given great latitude, great freedom to do whatever they want. And this was done, we got the Federal Reserve Act over 100 years ago now, was a big farce in the first place. This was a private group of bankers that conspired quietly to do what they did, and not in the public arena where there could be give and take and blowback from their plans. They did this quietly. The creature from Jekyll Island gets into this book that Edward G. Griffin wrote, and anyhow, these people are basically a bunch of criminal gangsters, and they're cutthroat, ruthless gaggle of murderous thugs. I mean, that's what they are. In all likelihood, the vast majority of researchers that have gotten into the JFK assassination believe that they were behind that too. These same Federal Reserve gangsters, and they couldn't have the competition that JFK was providing the people with these silver notes that were quickly gaining popularity and were obviously going to supplant the Federal Reserve notes. And so these people could not have that. And there were some high-ranking political names involved in this, and certain agencies within the government, for instance, some people, not all the people in the CIA, some people in the CIA, and possibly Secret Service. These are just criminals, moles that, slithered their way into these agencies. I'm not saying all these agencies are bad like the FBI. I mean, you got a lot of decent, upright people working in these places that really care about, the collective good of, their nation. But, beyond that, they can see this is for humanity. If you're not working for the whole, then you're not really ethical. You've got to care about not just your own nation, you've got to care about the welfare of other nations too. So this is all part of being a good agent working in any of these agencies. But, these people were involved in this, the JFK assassination, I firmly believe. And so you understand these people now have a very guilty conscience. So then we got Bill Clinton and the big scandal with the Whitewater thing, how that mysteriously just disappeared. Oh, there's nothing to see here anymore. Well, how does this happen? All of a sudden it just drops off the radar, And for years he's dragging the country through, Monica Lewinsky is tattooed in our brains. This is what America has to be proud of now is Bill Clinton and his affair with Monica Lewinsky. Year after year after year that went on. Does anybody remember that? But the Glass-Steagall Act was something he was responsible for. His presidency, was responsible for allowing the Glass-Steagall Act to expire, and it was basically a consumer protection regulation that, kept the wolves at bay to some degree. And the wolves, are the money printers, these policy makers. And so what they did was they were giving great latitude after Bill Clinton. Slick Willie allowed the Glass-Steagall Act to expire toward the end of his term. That was done quietly too. There was no public feedback on that issue. And so this allowed the bankers basically to go whole hog on the public, Wild West. And by that I mean they were able to dump currency on the housing market. And a lot of fraud took place. I could go on and on about derivatives, credit default swaps, liar loans. It was one method after another, just, fake. They got these appraisers going out there, working for the banks, and the banks, of course, want to dump as much money as they can, as long as it's insured, as long as they trust their master that they're free to do this thing, and, no holds barred, it's okay, give the borrower plenty of fine print, and trickery basically, and you sign, you're going to lose your house now. They knew it. They knew by just doing what they did that a lot of these people were going to end up losing their houses. So you understand how devious and how reprehensible what's happened here is. They knew as long as they were insured that they would get 100 cents back on the dollar, and quite likely get somebody's house too that they've stolen. Essentially, that's what they've done. If they're getting their money back through insurance, the government insurance, so they've socialized the debt, this fraudulent, illegitimate debt that they've inflicted on us, and then they privatize the profits. So the money's not even in circulation. It's worth very little as it is, but it's not, in terms of housing dollars. And that's really, you see, they picked on housing because it's an essential human need. They knew that. They knew they could never get away with this scam if it was for automobiles or appliances or electronics or anything that was considered a trinket or a luxury item. It had to be an essential human need. And they knew it'd be very hard to get away with it with water, though you see them making attempts to privatize all the water and gain control over that. And if they had their way, you'd be paying $5 to take a shower just for the water. And, the same with food. The government subsidizes the food that causes the prices to rise, so everybody's got to pay more because of these subsidies. But, it's very hard to starve the people out, because then what happens is you get other nations very concerned, and then you get relief teams in, wow, we got to feed the hungry Americans now. And, they know the Americans are proud, decent people that look after each other, and we set up food banks and food, soup kitchens and this sort of thing. And we're not going to tolerate being starved to death. We're going to, we're survivors. It's in our blood as Americans. So they knew that they weren't going to get away with that. But there's one thing that they could do if they did it incrementally, and that's with the housing. This gigantic housing bubble that they created that was legitimized back in 2008. You see, this is when, I was just waiting for that day for things, for the S to hit the fan. And it didn't happen. And I was very perturbed in 2008 when, our politicians, brown-nosed, sycophantic, boot-licking quislings of politicians, gave their stamp of approval. They validated, they legitimized the theft of the wealth of our nation in 2008, with Harry Paulson in there in Congress saying, hey man, we're going to have martial law. You better do this thing. You got no time to, hey, time's running out here. You better do something quick here. You better, better legitimize this, or, this nation is going to collapse. These people are too big to fail. They're too big to jail. So do what you got to do. And they did it. And very few of them stood up against it. Some did, thank God, but, You know, our ship was sunk at that point. The good ship America hit the wall, you know, and you can imagine, you know, this big long car with all these people hitting the wall, and you know who's going to get nailed first? The poor, you know, and then they've got to move up to the middle class because you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. So once they get all they can out of the poor and they're out there destitute, homeless, living in the bushes, living in their cars, dying out on the streets, getting their heads kicked in by the thugs or the police even sometimes, you know, then you understand the pernicious nature of what they have done to us and how horrific it is. So now they've moved on to the middle class, and who's left? The rich. So Obama comes out like he's this big taxer of the wealthy, and it's all we care about, guys like Warren Buffett. We just want to tax the rich. But everybody knows that the rich can hire an attorney for a fraction of the cost of paying their real taxes, and they're not going to pay. You know, they're shrewd. They've learned how to deal with the system. And you know, I'm not a guy that's into taxing anybody. You know, I'd say we got to wean ourselves off taxation. Furthermore, we got to wean ourselves off money. Money is a false god. It's the god of this world. I'm here to expose it. God puts things on my heart, and I've got to share. This is when I make these videos. It's a contribution to humanity because I do believe I've got things to share. And you know, we've really all got to get it, and really we've got to get off money eventually. That's what we've got to do, and with sound currency we could do that. It's all mathematical, you know. It's a matter of your money being worth more every day. This is progress. We found easier ways collectively as a civilized society to manufacture not only our needs but our wants. So that's why. That's a justification for why your currency should be worth more every day if it was sound and not less, not, you know, not being manipulated and not have price fixing. And you know, they call it capitalism, but it's anything but free market capitalism. It's market manipulation, it's price fixing, it's collusion of different special interest groups that have an interest in raising the price of that commodity. So you see what they've done with the housing is a really a bad thing. Okay, what they've done, because it's an essential human need. You see, I really wouldn't say a word. I wouldn't complain at all if they were just manipulating gold and silver and automobiles and electronics. I'd say, have to it, you know. See how far you can get with those trinkets, those luxury items, because they know they couldn't. They know they couldn't oppress the masses. They needed an essential human need, shelter. That's it. Every creature seeks shelter, and human beings are no different. So you see why I find it so appalling. I find these people an abomination, a scourge on the face of the earth. And I know that the Spirit of God does too, because God is fair. God cannot be both fair and unfair. And He loves us all equally. We're all born equal citizens of this planet and equally deserving to share in the earth's great bounty, which is, you know, it's very great. And, you know, so I believe in prosperity, not for a select few, or if you jump through these hoops, you deserve prosperity. I believe in prosperity across the board, universal prosperity, full prosperity, that this is the way to set the captives free when they're no longer bound and beholden by money. This is the only way out of all these problems we have. And we've just got to, you know, if anything I say makes sense, then please, you know, convey it to somebody else. And, you know, you could probably do it in a more cogent, coherent manner than I do. You know, my head is just swimming with different thoughts as I do a monologue. It's not easy. You know, I feel like, you know, when I'm having a conversation with somebody and it's this back and forth, you know, it triggers ideas in my mind that seem more profound and more cogent than when I do a monologue like this. It's very difficult. And I feel like I smile and laugh more during conversation. I mean, talking to a camera is not the same as talking to another person or other people. But having said that, you know, I think that it really is important that we all understand the root of the problem and what it's going to take. We really have to just understand, you know, the only way we can get off sound currency with human beings running this planet is to get off unsound currency is with sound currency. This is the only way the captives can be set free. It's going to solve the crime problem, the war problem, the debt problem, the poverty problem, all these problems go away. The abortion problem. Let me ask you, how many women would have abortions if they were rich? Very few rich women have abortions. So, consider these things I'm saying to you. And it goes on and on like that. I mean, this is just a fact. You just don't have a lot of thefts. I mean, if the guy has got money, he's not going to steal. It doesn't make